Okay, everyone's grabbing a seat. You guys don't have to stand. Did they tell you to stand? Oh, don't let me. I'm sorry. I'm trying to give instructions and the kids to sit down. They're like, no, Alex told us to stand. We're good? Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. I think I had a chance to say hello to most of you, but I will introduce myself. My name is Brenda Leaks. I'm the head of school here at Seattle Girls School, and I am so grateful that you came out this evening. I've said to a couple of people that Seattle is funny in that if it's really sunny, people don't always come to things. And if it's really rainy, people don't always come to things. So generally what you want is an overcast but dry day. And so you guys are like, committed because you came on a sunny day. So let's start with a round of applause for you. Yes. So welcome to 50 years of Title IX, past, present, and future of advancing sports equity and activism. This evening is going to be dynamic, filled with lots of information as we listen to the conversation between our panelists and moderator. You're going to learn. You will be moved, you will be inspired, and hopefully by the end of the program, you'll be ready to leave and do what you can to push forward issues around equity for sports. Before I get going, I want to make sure that I acknowledge all of the effort that went into our program tonight. I want to thank first our panelists and our moderator for being here to share their stories. You all are going to learn more about them as our students come up on the stage in a few minutes to introduce them, but they are amazing. Their stories are so inspiring, and I'm so grateful that they're here tonight to share their insights. I want to thank our SGS staff because they have worked so hard both to bring our group together that you're going to hear from tonight to organize this event. So thank you to the team. Thank you to Town Hall. I don't know how about many of you, but this is my first time being in this space down here. Is this beautiful? So I just want to say thank you to Town Hall for hosting us this evening. Town Hall does such an amazing job of bringing together speakers and topics that are really important for the day. And so it feels amazing to kind of be here in this space having this conversation. And then finally, thanks to all of you for coming tonight. Your presence shows that you care about this issue. You care about making sure that there are opportunities for kids in sports, no matter their gender identity. And that's what we're here to talk about. Some of you may be wondering why an independent middle school is having a program about activism and equity in sports. And the answer is our mission statement. It's who we are as a school. Seattle Girls School's mission is to inspire and develop courageous leaders who think independently, work collaboratively, learn joyfully, and champion change. Leadership development is what we do. It's what we care about, and leadership development happens in so many places. Of course, it happens in the classroom, right? It happens in the hallways at SGS, but it also happens on the court, on the ball field, right? It happens in so many places where kids have a chance to practice skills, to gain confidence, and to grow in how to be a great teammate. Right? A sports team is one of the best ways for kids to learn how to negotiate and navigate and work and collaborate with other people. Throughout this past year, we've been celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Title IX is a law that prohibited sex-based discrimination in schools that receive federal funding. As this 50th anniversary comes to a close, it's a good moment for us to reflect on how far we've come and all of the work that's left to be done. You all know that Title IX is still evolving. Just last month, the Education Department proposed a change to Title IX. That change would make it illegal for schools to broadly ban transgender student athletes from participating in sports based on their own chosen gender identity. How powerful is that? Yeah. It's really, really exciting to see this legislation aimed at protecting students with expansive gender identities. It may be happening a bit slower than some of us would like, but it is so good to see that it's happening. We are all going to keep watching Title IX as it changes over the next 50 years, and I am hopeful that it will be used to continue to push for greater equity in sports, because we believe at Seattle Girls School, and you'll hear from our panelists and moderator today, that being active in sports is also about leadership, right? And we believe that our kids, our children today and in the future deserve the opportunity to practice their leadership, yes, in the classroom, yes, in the hallway, in the boardroom, and on any sports field that they want to. So let's get our program started. I'm about to have our students come up to introduce our speaker and moderator. I just want to make sure that you know that the cards that are on your seat and the pen are so that you can write down the questions or comments that you want to make. The Q&A session is towards the end of the program, so we don't want you to forget your questions. You can see we have a mic here so that when it's time, you'll be ready to come on up. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Ashley, Beja, Lily, and Piper to the stage to introduce our speakers. Every time when I have a relative come to the house, they look at my paintings, like my pictures on the wall. They're like, you know you hung these too tall. Nobody can see these pictures but you. Okay. There you go.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ashley. I'm here to introduce someone who's a food justice advocate and works in collaboration with schools and community organizations. She played basketball in Athens, Greece, then was a coach for the Seattle University women's basketball team. I also love basketball, and I've been playing for about 3 years now. Playing at SGS, I learned good sportswomanship, and I learned basketball from my incredible dad and gained confidence from my mom cheering me on. I hope to keep playing basketball and earn MVP just like the woman I'm introducing. This amazing woman inspires me, and I would love to honor and introduce the one and only Joy Hollingsworth.
Hello, my name is Beja, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a 7th grader at SGS. I'm here to introduce Rosalie Fish, an amazing track star at the University of Washington. Like Rosalie, I'm also a student athlete at SGS. I've learned a lot from sports, and from Rosalie I've learned that you can advocate through sports. Rosalie is a 22-year-old Cowlitz tribal member who dedicates her races to the missing and murdered Indigenous women's crisis. She became the first UW student athlete to be awarded a Truman Scholarship, which is given to students nationwide for leadership skills. I am privileged and inspired to introduce Rosalie Fish.
Hi, my name is Lily. I'm in 7th grade at Seattle Girls School. I've played softball for 3 years now, which is why I wanted to introduce Katie Griggs. Just like sports play a big role in my life, sports played a big role in her education, development, and life. Katie Griggs is the first female president of the business operations of the team in MLB Mariner history. She is a fearless leader who listens and cares for her team, the fans, and the community. I'm inspired by Katie because of her perseverance and determination that got her where she is today. I'm proud to introduce to the stage Katie Griggs.
Hi, my name's Piper. I'm a 7th grader at SGS. In our school, we are doing a research project that reflects our values and interests. The project is called Pay It Forward, and my topic is the gender pay gap. I'm excited to introduce Ann Levinson because she is also an advocate for gender equity. Ann Levinson brought one of the first Title IX complaints to court. Because of this, universities have to provide parity for women's athletics. She also founded one of the first mental health courts. So please welcome Judge Ann Levinson.
Good evening. Oh, the mic is on. It's beautiful. Thank you all for being here. We're really excited. When we think about Title IX and the 50 years that women have been on the playing field And I'm thinking about, I love interesting facts. I was over there talking to the girls about like cool, interesting facts. So I looked some stuff up. In 1973, there was over 300,000 girls and women that were playing sports all across our country. In 2012, there was 3 million. Isn't that wild? 2012. 2023, there were 3.4 million. So it went up a little bit. But what I think about that number, as we continue to grow sports, I think about access, open access for girls in sports. And then I think about the gymnasium that the Seattle Girls School is building and how that's going to create this open access for girls in sports and the community, and how we need to continue to be building those things within our community centers and different schools. So just wanted to put that in people's mind as we think about Title IX and how we can help improve it. Just think about access. So we're so happy to be here, and we'll go ahead and get started. Rosalie, okay, first question. Tell us a little bit about you, your athletic journey, your activism, and what you're studying currently at the University of Washington.
Okay, thanks. Wyat Eskachef, Rosalie Fish Sitsta, Bakashuv Yaptikalitz Abshad. My name is Rosalie Fish, my pronouns are she, her, and I just introduced myself in the traditional language of the Coast Salish people, which is here in Seattle. I'm enrolled in the Cowlitz tribe, and I grew up in Auburn, Washington, on the Muckleshoot Reservation. So I lived right across from the Muckleshoot Casino. I started going to the tribal school because the Muckleshoot tribe has their own health and wellness center, our sheriff's department, our schools, and health clinics and behavioral health and stuff like that. So I started there as one of Muckleshoot Tribal School's only distance runners and only cross-country and track runners. And it was in that setting for the first time when I experienced racial discrimination in sport. So I showed up to a lot of these events as the only runner, and I had Muckleshoot Tribal across my uniform. And when I was attempting to get into these races, I was met with comments like, well, we've never heard of Muckleshoot Tribal School before. I had been asked, well, do you even own a uniform? There was even graffiti put into the women's bathroom at my home school that said, Muckleshoot scum. Drink, gamble, and live off the government is all that Muckleshoot scum are good for. And this is the external messaging that students from my community that were my age were getting. And it was almost always in this like underlaying aspect of sport. It was in a basketball game when we were getting these racist comments. I had been asked if I was allowed to be there, even when I was a senior in high school, questions like, well, shouldn't you be racing in junior varsity? And the thing that sports gave me was that I was able to win varsity after being asked, well, shouldn't you be in junior varsity? And even though women are told, especially women of color or girls who are having intersectional identities, we're being told that we can't do something, sports gives us the opportunity to prove people wrong in their own field or in their own area. And that was this form of empowerment that I had never felt before. And after finding that strength and finding that fierceness and being able to compete when it was even a struggle to get to that starting line, for me to get to that starting line regardless of the obstacles, compete and win, made me find confidence in not only myself as an athlete, but as an Indigenous woman. And by being here in this space and sharing our stories as female athletes, we have that power of proximity for any of these other young athletes and other young girls watching us that we struggled too, that it wasn't easy to get here. But we are just as capable of fighting whatever injustice or challenges that we're facing. So I really held on to that feeling of empowerment, and I decided to dedicate my races to the missing and murdered Indigenous women's crisis because I saw a marathon runner named Jordan Marie Whitestone, who is the Lakota tribe, ran her race in acknowledgement of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And it was through her story and through the empowerment of my sport where I began to feel confident in who I am and my community, that I was able to then dedicate my races to the missing and murdered Indigenous women crisis and be featured on the Seattle Times. So that's my story.
And microphone's still on, I'm sorry. And Kate, you have built a career on business and athletics. Can you go into detail about your journey and how you got here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and it's such an incredible story and privilege to sit alongside both of you. So I did not start out in sports. I didn't have any clue what I wanted to be in middle school or college or after college. And as a result, I've always been driven by a love of learning. And I'm curious in terms of why people do the things you do and how you can influence behavior. And as silly as it may sound, how you can make people happy. And for me, when I thought about the things that influenced a lot of the decisions I made over the course of my life and some of the things that made me most happy, it came back to the world of sports. I was I would say, solidly average all-around athlete most of my life. I could not compete in a way. There's a reason I'm on the side of the business that I am. But it was something where some of my fondest memories are spending time with my family and friends at different sporting events and seeing what it felt like to be a member of a team. Sometimes we won, sometimes we didn't. Frankly, I probably learned more when we didn't than when we did. And so it wasn't until I went back to grad school and was really still at a bit of a loss as to what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go, but knew at some point I should probably figure it out, that I settled in on sports has always been a huge part of my life. I'd love to find the opportunity to get my foot in the door and be able to wake up each morning engaged in something that, again, done well, done right, has the opportunity to influence behavior for good and bring people together. So it was a long and winding journey from there. If you had asked me back then if I was expecting or wanted to become the president of a Major League Baseball team, I would have laughed, mostly because it wouldn't have occurred to me. Looking around, there certainly wasn't anyone who looked like me or had a background like I did who was doing that at the major league level in baseball or frankly in most other sports, especially in men's professional sports. And so I've had a lot of wonderful mentors and had the opportunity to work with incredible organizations over the last number of years of my career. And so when the phone call came about would I be interested in moving to Seattle, I spent a lot of time. I have two young kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old at home, and spent a lot of time not only talking to our ownership group, but other individuals who work for the organization, community leaders, government leaders, and understanding what was the opportunity. And for me, particularly at that point in time, so shortly coming out of COVID, there was a very real opportunity to bring people back together. And I think one of the things that's most special to me about what we get to do at the ballpark is we're at a point in time when I think a lot of the first point of interaction is looking at people to figure out what's different about them. And you start from a place of difference. When you're at a ball game or a sporting event in general or track meet, you are starting from a point of celebration. Cal Raleigh hits a home run, you're giving the person next to you a high five because at that moment, what brings you together is you're both Mariners fans. You're both fans of sport. And so you actually have an opportunity to recreate some of those connections as a community around something that's a shared passion. So I feel very privileged to get to do what I do. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. But it's also a privilege to get to be, at this point, when I took the job, I was the only female president of a Major League Baseball team. There are now 2 of us, so we're making progress. There are now 2 of us, and there are 2 women who have very recently been promoted to COOs inside their respective organizations. So it's really exciting to recast what success can look like and hopefully help other people see themselves in those positions in a way that perhaps I didn't when I was earlier in my career.
It's amazing. And I also have to give you a shout out on your shoe game. I think you have the best shoes. Air Force with the gum bottoms. Oh, I knew that. And you were one of the first people to file a Title IX complaint. Can you briefly tell us about what that complaint was, what was the outcome, and your story?
You bet.
Well, first I have to say, you mean your high school guidance counselor didn't say major league sports in
Shockingly, no.
I know. I think we had the same career path planning at school. So I was born in Kansas, and my family moved back east when I was 10, and I got involved in sports in high school and loved them. And I got a call out of the blue from a coach at University of Kansas who was recruiting me to come back there. And she'd heard that I was a pretty good field hockey player, and she wanted me to come play for them, and she promised me a scholarship, and I was very excited by this. And this scholarship, if memory serves me, was for $1,000, and it was for the whole team. And what that meant was the woman who had it, who was a junior, when she graduated, then I could have it. And so it shows you a little bit about how far we've come. So I went back to University of Kansas, and we had a terrific first season when I was a freshman. We won a lot, and we were ready to just really rock the next year. And the university announced out of the blue that they were going to cut all the women's sports except for basketball. And so there we were, you know, all of our different teams kind of just looking at each other. The coaches were going to be out of jobs, and nobody knew what to do. And I had no real background in high school. I hadn't been involved in student government. I wasn't paying attention to the world the way I should have. I had not gone to SGS, so I was not. So I lacked all of those things. I didn't, you know, I'd never done a press conference. I didn't know what the legislature did. I didn't have any of that. But I had a lot of righteous indignation. So. Yes, right. So I tried to go right this wrong and figure out how we could fix this. And I went to the Student Senate, which in that era was run all by guys. And I asked them if they would help us. And they didn't know what field hockey was. And I think I remember some phrase like yardstick when they meant field hockey stick. But they were doing battle with the university administration about budgets. And we presented yet another issue they could take on. So they welcomed me in, and with their help, I learned how to lobby and advocate and learned how to read budgets and just really drill down on this. And I had to figure out how to get publicity. And I know for the students in the room, you're going to be shocked by this, but we had no internet. So in that era, you had to organize by using a bulletin board. And I can explain to you later what that is. But and then, you know, you had potlucks and things. So trying to figure out how to get publicity for our cause. And I ended up organizing a relay race for all of the student athletes and coaches who were not, for all the teams that were getting cut. So all the players and the coaches, and we ran from the university campus to the state capitol, which was about a half an hour away. We each ran a mile, and we had a petition rolled up in a baton, and we would hand it to the next one. And we were all wearing our uniforms. So for the field hockey players, I was the kilts. And so we delivered it to the steps of the state capitol, where a female legislator who had promised to help us was there, and folks from the governor's office were there. And so that got on the evening news and in the papers. There were these pictures of us running across the flatlands of Kansas in our uniforms, and then of me handing the petition to the legislature. And the women in the legislature agreed to help us with a little temporary funding. And then we got a lot of visibility. All of a sudden, the governor was wanting to have, we had lunch with the governor. And so we thought we were on our way, only to learn that this was just a temporary fix, and budgets only last 1 year, and that was going to be the end of that. But we could do bake sales. That's what we were told if we wanted to have funding. So the cause got a lot of publicity, started to get more coverage. There were a lot of negative editorials at that time that we would be the end of men's sports because of what we were doing, and others who sort of told us to stay in our lane, and, you know, a number of other things. So it got a little challenging for a while, and there was a terrific feminist professor there, and She was a professor of classics. She didn't have any background in sports, but she had read about this battle and she wanted to help, so she wrote me a letter. And I'll explain later what letters are also. She said, how can I help? And would I want to meet with her and learn about possibilities? So we did that, and she suggested I file a Title IX complaint. And I said, what's Title IX? And she did this deep sigh and then encouraged me to go research it. So went to the library, did all this reading. I came back, I said, I'm in. And she said, well, you figure it out and you file it, and if you do, then I'll file one. So I filed this complaint under all the different categories. Now I knew the budget backwards and forwards, so I knew there was an equity in everything, in training, in facilities, in scholarships, every aspect of athletic program. So I filed a complaint on all of those, in all those categories, not knowing that you weren't supposed to do that. You were just supposed to pick a category, but so anyway, that got in the queue, and what had happened was, even though Title IX had passed in 1972, and now I was a sophomore, I was 19 years old at this time, this was 1978, and they still hadn't implemented it because the federal government really didn't want this law, and one way you keep things from happening is you don't put together the implementing regulations. Anyway, they hadn't really enforced this yet. There had been no claims that had gotten all the way through the process. So there's a lot of foot dragging, there's a lot more back and forth, a lot more advocacy work. And then in my senior year, finally, they started the investigation, and they sent 6 investigators to the campus, and they said that this complaint was one of the top priorities for the country because of its potential impact. They found the university out of compliance and told them they had 90 days to get in compliance or risk losing $27 million. So all of a sudden the university cared, and they reached a settlement, so the 13-point, what they call it, remediation plan, so on all the categories to bring women's athletics into equity with men's athletics. And by then, I had graduated. But at least for all the women and girls who came after me, that the world had changed a little bit.
That's amazing, and I know one of the holdups, obviously after Title IX passed, and you now put it into practice, was because the NC2A had sued because they did not want
Right.
gender equity as well.
Right.
And so, Rosalie, can you tell us, why do you think sports is such a great platform for activism to happen, an effective way?
I think you mentioned it a little bit too, Katie, is how sports brings people together. And how through athletics, you are going to reach people who possibly never wanted to be reached. We actually hear that a lot. They want us to keep politics or keep humanity out of sports. And one thing that I've told my coaches, they never argue back with me, but I still let them know, I am always going to be Rosalie Fish before I am the University of Washington athlete, because you're not going to take that away from me. And all of the things that go into Rosalie Fish, including being bisexual or being indigenous or being one of 3 Native student athletes in the entire university, is that's not going to go away when I put on this uniform. Of course, all my coaches have been like, okay. Yeah. They've never fought me on it. But we're able to reach so many different audiences of people. And you might have heard that when it comes to diversity efforts, that the people who need to be in the room when it's voluntary are not in the room. And in order to create this systemic and community change, we have to reach the people who don't want to be in the room. And sports is the perfect way to do that. And even though it might feel like you're going up there by yourself, like for example, when I went and raced with the red handprint over my mouth, along with the letters MMIW down my leg for missing and murdered Indigenous women, I heard all kinds of things. I heard people come up and tell me, well, nice war paint. I've been asked, are you allowed to wear that? Are you sure? And luckily, I had a coach who had skimmed every single line in the rule book to say, yes, she can, because he knew the reactions that I was going to get. and that people would do or say anything to stop an Indigenous person to representing my community and the injustices we face in what's supposed to be a safe space from all of that. And through advocacy in athletics, we're deciding sports isn't going to be a safe place away from the issues that are going on in our communities, especially the issues that women are facing, but instead we're going to make sports a safe place to be ourselves without having to put the level or that layer of athlete before our names, our communities, our identities. So it can be challenging, you know? But once you're able to build that courage to be an advocate in the realm of sports, you are going to make an impact. People aren't always going to be happy about it, but it's going to be there. So that's what counts.
And Katie, tell us, what responsibility do professional sports have to create gender equity within, on the field, or on the court, and also in the professional realm?
Well, I think just from a very pragmatic standpoint, 50% of our fans are females, and for us, looking at it and making sure that regardless of who you are or how you identify, that you feel that there's a place for you in sport is absolutely critical. One of the things that I'm actually really excited about, y'all may have heard, we're going to be hosting the All-Star here this summer. And as part of that, there's an opportunity to collaborate with Major League Baseball on a deeper level around activations and supporting our community. And we're a little bit unique. We are the Seattle Mariners. We're very proud to call Seattle home. But we actually serve a 5-state region, so we represent the entire Pacific Northwest. And so as part of this, a lot of the work that we do day in, day out, but are able to scale, particularly this year as a result of the collaboration with Major League Baseball, is around youth access. You'll notice I said youth. I didn't say boys. I didn't say baseball. I said youth, right? So this is something where, again, recognizing that there's sport and the role of play and physical activity plays a massive role in outcomes. We're a public institution, right? This is something that we care about. And one of the things that I am really, really excited about this year is, for the first time ever, actually down in Portland, the major activation around what's called Play Ball Weekend, which is really focused on particularly underserved youth and communities and giving them access to sport. Portland is going to be the only place in the entire country that's doing a softball-specific activation. And so it's something where, again, we as organizations, I think, frankly, particularly in men's professional sports, have been a little bit slow on the uptake. And a lot of it has to do with who's in the room and who's talking. I think the good news is you're starting to see more people in the room that reflect many more diverse viewpoints. And are allowing us a greater platform to do the things that, frankly, we should have been doing the whole time. And so there's much work to be done, but we are getting a lot better, and we will only continue to get better from here.
Nice. And I'd like the same question for you, because a lot of people don't know, you also helped save the Seattle Storm from, right? Which is amazing, working with Force 10 and that phenomenal ownership group. So what do you think professional sports had their responsibility to create gender equity?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, Saving the Storm actually was a direct outgrowth of that Title IX experience. And the sort of key reason for Saving the Storm wasn't to make money or build a business. It was to provide opportunity for women to compete at the professional level, and for young people to have role models they could look up to and they could see the opportunities, right? And when I was growing up, we didn't have female professional athletes, so the only posters you could have on your walls were male athletes, right? And for a lot of the negotiations for this team, I needed to, in order to save the team, I needed to negotiate with a very conservative, very Republican, very different than me group of men who had purchased the team. And so a lot of what I ended up talking with them about was why this team was so important to Seattle and to the community and to the young people growing up here, and what this team then had to pay back to the community. That is what we had to stand for. and that we weren't just about dribbling, and that we were going to have a very deep a commitment to the values that were important to this community, and we were going to focus on having players and coaches who lived up to those values. And so a lot of what we've done since then is to, in fact, walk that talk. And I think sports are athletes and teams can have such an important platform that they provide visibility. And as you were saying, they get folks to pay attention in ways that they wouldn't otherwise do. And it's a much less threatening way to change hearts and minds, and to bring together a diversity of folks who, in other parts of their life, tend to stay in separate spaces. So, yeah, I'm totally with you guys on this. I think that sports has a very significant role to play in helping us move society forward, as long as the folks in leadership positions in those sports and those athletes use their voices for the right reasons.
Absolutely. And Seattle has a really rich basketball history, and I know a lot of the guys get a lot of shine, but we have a lot of rich history about, women's athletics here in sports, and the Seattle Reign and our soccer team and Sue Birds and Tara Davis. And I go on and on about all the great athletes that have come out of Seattle that are women. Love to open this up to the group. What do you all say to young folks that want to get active and be able to, use sports as, a catalyst to be able to, change and justice and use that as a platform? And what would you say to young folks?
Yeah, for sure. I often say, just think about if you didn't have the right to vote, or think about if we didn't have Title IX, you didn't have those opportunities to play. Somebody had to do that, and we stand on their shoulders, and so now it's our turn to lead and to carry the torch. And each generation has that responsibility, and when we do that, we open doors for others. And there's this sense of, when you're involved in athletics, there's a sense of perseverance and commitment, and that you can overcome any obstacle, and that if something doesn't go the way you intended, you can pivot and try another strategy. Same holds true for advocacy, and there's so much work to be done that we need to reach back and bring the next generation along, and each of us has that responsibility. And one of the things that we were talking before the program, I was talking with someone, and this is, I've thought this a lot over the years, is we both want younger people to appreciate how hard it was and how far we've come, and we don't want them to have to think about that for a minute. So we want you all to know what Title IX is, but you shouldn't have to, right? It's So if we've been successful, you can just play and have every opportunity in front of you and not have to worry about that struggle. But there is so much more work to be done. And so when you come off the court, we want you to be using the rest of your time to advocate the heck out of everything we can to help make this world better. So
Nice. Anyone else?
I can.
Advice for young folks?
I don't know about advice. The only thing I would say is, think oftentimes women convince themselves they can't do things, particularly if you don't see people who look like you, or you don't see people who've done things like you. You can do anything you want, right? It's something where I think it's having that confidence and realizing that the worst thing that happens when you try is it doesn't work. And it might be embarrassing, or it might feel bad for a minute, but you're making progress. And you learn from it, and then you get better, and you figure out, okay, if that didn't work, what did I learn? How do I do something differently next time? Because you will figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think sports is something where some people are naturally incredibly gifted field hockey players or runners. Some people are not. I'll call myself out. And that's okay too, right? But I enjoyed it, and I made friends, and I built confidence, and it was fun, and it was okay that I was playing for fun. It's okay that I didn't end up being varsity. It's okay that I didn't end up being pros. Some women do that, and that's amazing. a lot more people that come away with greater sense of confidence, greater sense of self-worth, and greater sense of friendship with a really wide array of people, and something that hopefully you can carry forward and that will help you grow and continue to stay engaged in those sports and your communities going forward. So I think it would mostly just be, if you're not someone who's necessarily incredibly natively talented from the age of 2 at something, doesn't mean you shouldn't try if it's something you're excited about. And if it doesn't work, that's cool. It's okay to have fun, and if you're not having fun, it's okay to try something else and have fun there.
Rosalie?
Yeah. I would say to remember why you fell in love with the sport in the first place. I think there's a lot of things that playing sports gives to us personally. I mean, there's a reason why we picked the sport we did. It's because whatever that relationship we had with it, we fell in love with it. I can speak a little bit to a lot of girls aren't really brought up to love our bodies. And being in a sport and pushing myself made me find appreciation for my body that I hadn't had before, because I was able to define my appreciation for my body for what it did for me and how I pushed it, how it always forgave me, even when I was really mean to it. It always forgave me and was there for me. And trying to remember to hold on to that relationship with that sport, whatever it is that it gave to you. I could focus on how the championships or the medals or whatever it was, but the thing that's going to stick with me forever is after I signed my letter of intent to the University of Washington, that news got to the Tulalip Tribal School, and their girls started their middle school girls started a cross-country team. Right. Because when they saw me sign there, they said, we didn't know that we could do that. And whatever races, whatever I've done, I don't even care anymore, because that's the part that's going to stick with me forever. So sometimes we can look at sports as in, how far is it going to get me? What am I going to accomplish? But your relationship with your sport is the most important thing. And your relationship with your sport can be so important that it affects other people's relationships with their sports.
Nice. And now is our favorite time. We'd love to open it up to Q&A from our audience, reserving the time first for our youth. Don't come all at once, but while we're waiting for you all to get your questions, don't worry. We have some. I'd love to know who your favorite athletes were growing up, if you had any, and why.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say, because so many, guys, right? Because
Right.
just weren't a lot of women. Well, I would say actually in high school and beyond, so Martina Navratilova and Chris Everett in that era, watching a lot of those tennis competitions. Yeah, Martina. Yep, and that they were just starting to get visibility and attention, and still the purse they got was quite a bit less than the guys who were playing. But it was such a great example of competition, and they would show them later as peers and talking about issues in the world. So both of them were using their voices even back then.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Katie?
It's interesting. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there weren't a lot of professional sports in Raleigh. We had the Durham Bulls. That was my go-to team. But it was a lot about college athletics, and so a lot of the both men and women I grew up cheering on, many of them, their careers from an athletics competition standpoint, at least at that level, was collegiate. So my guess is that there'd be a lot of names that no one in here could recognize. But they had an impact on me as a kid. Those were the people I looked up to. I remember the day when I realized I was older than college athletes, and it was really upsetting to me because they were my heroes growing up. I'm now permanently upset just for this. But that was it. So it's a bunch of men and women who, many of whom are now living lives like we are, but they were incredible athletes in their sports, and they were my role models growing up.
Nice. And before Rosalie answers, I'd love to invite anyone up if they have a question at this time. Go ahead, Rosalie. Tell us about your favorite athlete.
Okay. I think my first one was Billy Mills. Always will be. A gold medalist in the 10K. who is also the first Native American to ever run, and he got a gold medal in the 10K. And also, you know, Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird was like one of those things growing up with like, if you're anybody who's LGBTQ saw Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird, was like, do I want to be them? Do I want to be with them? Like, I don't know. But I love them, still love them. If anybody knows them, tell them.
I love that.
Megan is accounted for.
I love that.
They are both accounted for.
And my favorite athlete was Althea Gibson.
Oh, yes.
Right? Won 11 Grand Slams.
Yes.
And one of the things I think about is after she won Wimbledon, she shook the Queen's hand, and she was talking to reporters, and she was like, yo, I've come a long way to sitting in the back of the bus with black people and thinking about the barriers that she was breaking as a black woman, going over to Wimbledon and winning as a, in 1957. Like, that's just, it blows my mind. So thinking about women like her is special. We have a question.
I want to talk to you about, I have a great Althea story about her first match at the US Open, where she was being heckled and a lightning bolt hit one of the things at the top, and the statue fell to the ground, and they had to suspend play, and it really was just very prescient of a change that was coming. So let's just at that.
Because she had a connection.
She did. And my great moment was when Billie Jean King beat
Yes.
Bobby Riggs. I was a little girl. I'm old. It was great. I would love for our moderator to share a little bit of your story and
Yes.
journey, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
This is so nice of you.
It's all about inclusion, girl.
Okay, I'll be super quick, and then we'll answer more questions. So I'm born and raised in Seattle. I grew up in the historic Central District of our city. I currently live in my grandmother's home that she bought in 1947, which is wild, and she lived to be 101. And when I think about my grandmother, she passed away last year, but I think about, playing basketball and education and all these different things. I think about, the strength of her and how she's been my role model. And she was born in 1920 in South Carolina, migrated here in 1947, and was the first black woman on the Seattle School Board, and helped our city desegregate during integration back in 1979 when she was the school board president. So as I was thinking about my life and learning about after she passed and learning about all the things that I'm going through, I think I get a lot of inspiration from her, and had a wonderful time playing basketball overseas in Greece, came back, and I'm gonna date myself to our young people. I'm on an airplane coming back from Greece. I have a ginger ale in one hand, and I have a Sky Mall magazine in the other. And I'm trying to think and Sky Mall magazine is, basically Amazon in a book, right? And I'm thinking about what I'm gonna do life after basketball. And it was that moment where I knew I was being bordered by the game so much because I had been within my sport so much, I hadn't thought about life after basketball. And that's when I kind of got my way and thought about nonprofit work and really connected with my community in that. And so that is a little bit about my journey. And now I work at Northwest Harvest doing food justice all across the state. So yeah, thank you for that. Do we have any more questions? I wanted to, can I ask more questions while we're waiting from our audience? Katie, what is it like to work for the Mariners? I think that's like the coolest job in the world.
Yeah.
I get to go to a lot of baseball games. No, it's a privilege. It's a lot of fun. Little known fact, we actually have one of the youngest and most diverse rosters in Major League Baseball, which is awesome. And I think one of the things that's most fun is given a lot of freedom to think about how do we approach our sort of city and our region differently. And I think one of the things that's really unique and special about baseball is we have a lot of games and we have a big ballpark. And what that actually means is we get the opportunity to be much more inclusive and much more accessible and welcome in a much broader swath of our community than might be possible if we didn't have so many games in such a large ballpark. And it's a privilege. And I think that one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about is helping people see themselves in the sport, helping people recognize that a love of the game, or frankly, just a love of being together with other people on a nice night outside, with ballpark and a baseball game as background, is there's something for everyone. And so last year, we rolled out a value menu. We rolled out consistently low price tickets for every single game. It's something that I'm passionate about, something I get to actually make, hopefully, a little bit of moving the needle and make it better and easier for people to do something that they care about. So it's a lot of fun. I get to work with some really awesome individuals inside our organization and spending some time with some pretty cool players down on the field as well. But it really is, it's an opportunity to make an impact that I don't think I would have expected I'd have the ability to do.
Nice, great. And then I think we have a question, some more questions.
Hi, my name is Heidi, and I wanted to ask about space. I remember in the 90s when I was playing softball for my town that there was a lot of inequity between the space that we got as middle schoolers for softball and what the boys got for baseball. I know Seattle Girls School currently doesn't have a gymnasium, and that's one of their big visions and goals for the coming year or two. And I'm just wondering what you've noticed about inequity in space that is provided for the different genders, and what you think the importance of space is and how relevant that is to our ability to have equity in sports.
Well, I'll jump in. It's a great question. So one of the areas where Title IX has not resulted in enough progress yet is access. So particularly for young girls of color and for folks from lower income communities, there aren't the same fields, there aren't the same gyms, there aren't the same facilities, there's not the same equipment, and we're not there yet. So for that kind of intersectionality, that's got to be a priority going forward. And one of the things I really like about SGS's plan for the new gym is they don't intend it just to be a gym, they intend it to be there for the community as well. And that kind of partnering, I think, is what we need to do. I don't know if you all remember this, but I think it was 2019, there was a report done in King County about the inequity in terms of access to playing fields and the like, and the data is really clear. And for example, for young people from non-English speaking families, there's even lower levels of participation and access. So I'm a big believer in what SGS is working on now in terms of phase 2 and having that gym community center and doing it in a way that's open to the surrounding neighborhood and open to others to partner, and then providing opportunities for the students to, as you guys were saying, to try all sorts of sports that you might not otherwise get to do in life. And I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Nice. Anyone else?
Sure, I can go. To me, if you don't create a space for people, they don't know that they're supposed to be there, is what comes down to it for me. I know at the University of Washington, we're trying to do a really big push for an adaptive sports department, because right now, if you go to the University of Washington, if you're me and you go to the University of Washington and say, why don't we have any athletes with disabilities? They would say, because we haven't had any athletes who are interested in it. But how are diverse athletes supposed to know that they have a place in sports if you're not giving them one? And that's my opinion on space in a nutshell.
Katie?
That's
okay, I got you. That. Easy. We have some more questions? Yes.
How did you survive without the internet?
Everybody hear that? This is a great question. How did you all survive without the internet?
I didn't. So we had these things called paper and pens. Walked to the library, took books out, had phones with a rotary dial to organize everybody. Yeah, it was tough.
Do we have more questions at all? Yes, awesome.
Hi, I'm Tim, Piper's dad. Sorry, Pipes. So there's plenty of men coaching female pro sports. When do you think the first female is going to coach male pro sports?
Great question.
There is somebody.
It is? Head coach?
Yep.
Did I miss?
Yes.
I missed it?
But maybe you're talking about there needs to be more opportunities,
Yes.
right, for women. Okay, there we
Thank
go.
you.
I got you, Tim.
So there's,
got
I
you.
can look up her name and give it to us, but there is a head woman, a head men's soccer coach who was a woman, who was the first woman of a men's sports team to get a national championship. I forgot her name though.
We'll look it up.
I got you.
We can look it up on the internet.
Yes.
We can survive.
We can
What
start
do
with
you
a
all
J.
think about the crossover? Like we always see men in women's sports. How can we get that crossover for women?
Yeah, that's another area where we need a lot more progress. We need much more diversity in university administrators for sports. We need that in coaches. We need it in officials. And we need more paths for women to have those opportunities. They certainly have the skills. The doors just haven't been open.
Okay, that's all great. Wonderful. We're getting there, slowly but surely.
Yeah.
All right, but the one sport where we don't have women, and it's a major league sport, baseball. When are we going to do it?
I don't know.
And I would love to see it because I played baseball. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, okay? And we didn't have softball. I played with the boys, okay? So I played hardball. Okay, maybe that's why. Huh? But I played hardball. And there was no way I was gonna go and play softball because I wanted to play hardball. So when are we gonna get that?
I don't know, and I wish I did. It's interesting, though, if you look to your point about spaces and the fact, like, first step is you gotta create a space, you've gotta create infrastructure, you've gotta create the ability for people to play. University of Washington actually has a women's baseball team.
Oh.
So they actually do have a baseball team of women, and it's fun. We've had the privilege of getting to host them and have them play at T-Mobile Park. It is something that needs to move. And I really wish I had a good answer for you as to why it hasn't moved faster. And I think part of it may be you've got an infrastructure that's been in place for longer in sports like basketball, in sports like hockey, in sports like in football. It's interesting. So I came from Atlanta. And one of the things that the Atlanta Falcons actually worked to roll out was the first statewide middle and high school girls flag football league. Again, working to create a platform for women to participate in the sport who wanted to. Baseball and football are behind.
Okay.
Baseball and football are
because,
behind.
to be honest with you, it was there. If you really think about it, that's what the movie was made on. Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out like why it did not continue and where we're going to go now. I mean, it's there. It's been there. So we need to move this a little bit forward. Okay.
Agreed.
Let's work on it.
Agreed. Let's work. Katie, you could do it.
Yeah, working on it. Work on it.
So when I was in 7th grade, I tried to try out for the boys' baseball team because I didn't want to play softball. And I got a nice pat on the head. And,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They didn't push me away because I was...
Yeah, good.
And I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, I will date myself. Ken Griffey's father was one of my favorite players in Cincinnati. I have big red machine here, so who knows about that? Okay, thank you. OHI over here. So I grew up in Cincinnati, yeah. Big red machine. And Joy, you were at Fame recently talking about your upcoming campaign. So I just wanted to call you out a little bit because you are activating a lot more than you want to share tonight, but super impressed. And I was just talking about your grandmother because we're looking for stories of people who were here during desegregation. So I need to talk to you offline.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So my question and maybe point is I spent the better part of yesterday and through today listening to a 24-hour teach out, and it was given by Common Power. And they're down in Florida, because we know what's happening in Florida around education, around DEI. And one of the reasons I listened is because what's happening with House Bill 999 is going to ripple effect if we're not careful into things like sports, because it's trying to shut down things that differentiate and that call out injustice and create an idea of diversity and all things. So I just wanted to make sure that you all knew about that if you didn't. And if you do know about it, we need to make sure everybody's on top of helping to shut that down, in the form of protests, open letters, testimonies, etc. But we do not want athletics to be part of that. We don't want anything that is opening up doors for people like ourselves and other people that haven't had a voice or space. And that includes all of us. So just wanted to bring that up. And I know that we think it's only Florida, but it's happening in other states as well. So just need your activation. We need your support. We need to all be aware of what the impact could be. But thank you very much for being here. It's such an impressive panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm an SGS alumni mom.
Oh, I love that.
So there's, within the NCAA, they are actually urging all of their athletes to send letters to Congress right now. So if you are an athlete, Congress, for all of this stuff with trying to exclude trans women in sports, they're listening to athletes right now. So use that to your advantage, is what I would say.
Awesome. Thank you. And, Miss Pam. Okay, one more? Yeah, I can't say no to Miss Pam.
I just can't resist because there's young people here tonight, and it's so important. I was an athlete prior to Title IX. I remember the moment that my friend Tommy went off to a full scholarship and I didn't. And I remember it like it was yesterday. But since we're here to celebrate the 50 years, the difference that Title IX made is more than in sports. It's made a difference in leaders, women leaders. Before Title IX, there was one CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That was Washington Post. Since Title IX, it has multiplied. It's not enough, but it sure helped. I found myself in a situation with a group of women, a small group of women in the White House, and we were waiting to go in, and we had to wait for quite a while, and so we had a conversation. And what we discovered about ourselves, and they were all leaders of various organizations, and what we discovered was that we had all been athletes in our life. Sports is really important to leadership development. How have you felt about that as you have grown up? But, getting your young people, getting your girls in sports young, is going to help and pay off for a long time. I'd love your comments on that.
Yeah, I would say that I wasn't necessarily the most leader person in high school. I was fighting all the time with my classmates, with my siblings, with my parents, my teachers, and it was my coach who was kind of able to look at me and get down to the bottom of, I had stuff going on where I felt like I had to fight. So he just took me and he turned me at the people who were making racist comments towards my school on different teams. He said, all right, just go that way. Just fight that way. And it worked. And even though I didn't have quite the leadership skills to be able to speak about my experiences and to get deeper into what are the issues that we were facing verbally, that I was able to stick up for my community through my actions. And then it was through there that I was actually able to be more comfortable speaking because I'd already proven to myself and proven to my community that I can be a leader through my actions.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Ms. Pam Eakes. That was great. Just want to thank you all for coming. I also want to give a shout out because we're a little unique in Seattle. We have 2 female athletic directors that serve at University of Washington, Jennifer Cohen, and then athletic director Seattle U, Shanae Fink. Shanae Fink, I'm sorry. I think that's really important as we're thinking about, obviously in athletics, those people are conductors at the athletic department. So we want to thank you all for coming. I know that we're going to have Miss Brenda come up, and we are not coming up. I read it wrong. I'm sorry. All right, that is our panel. Thank you all. Yes. All right. Thank you. That was great.